You won't believe what happened when a shy girl mustered the courage to ask Jimmy Butler a question about God that no one else dared to ask during a lively press conference. Jimmy Butler's heartfelt response left the entire room speechless and revealed a side of him the world had never seen before. If you've just discovered our channel, take a second to subscribe and enjoy the story. The afternoon sun in Florida streamed through the windows of the Martinez family's living room in Miami. 12-year-old Jasmine sat on the couch, watching another Golden State Heat game without taking her eyes off the television. Every time Jimmy Butler made one of his signature three-point shots, Jasmine's eyes lit up. "It looks so easy," said Jasmine's father, David, a physical education teacher who had immigrated from Mexico 17 years ago. A love for basketball was something the father and daughter shared deeply. This tradition had begun when Jasmine was just 6 years old. Jasmine's mother, Claire, a nurse at Jackson Memorial Hospital, smiled at the familiar scene, but a shadow of worry crossed her face. In the weeks since her grandmother passed away, Jasmine had become more withdrawn than usual. At school, Jasmine was known as a quiet girl. This didn't bother her. During recess, she preferred to read books or take notes in her notebook. Questions about life, the universe, and, lately, God. Questions that her sixth-grade classmates rarely considered. "Jasmine, did you see the email from school?" asked Monica, sitting next to her daughter. "They're having an essay contest. The winner gets tickets to a press conference with Heat players." Jasmine's eyes widened momentarily before returning to her contemplative expression. "What's the theme? How sports values inspire your life," replied Monica, exchanging a meaningful look with David. That night, while the rest of the house slept, Jasmine stayed awake writing. The words flowed with surprising ease as she described how Butler's perseverance, dedication, and humility had become a beacon during the difficult moments she was facing. 3 weeks later, the school principal announced over the sound system, "The winner of the Sports Values Contest is Jasmine Martinez from the 6th grade." Dinner that night was more lively than usual. Monica prepared enchiladas, Jasmine's favorite dish, in celebration. "Satie are so proud," said David, serving himself a second portion. "What are you most looking forward to at the press conference, Mija?" Jasmine poked at her food with her fork before answering. "I have a question to ask Butler, if I have the courage." "What kind of question?" inquired Monica. "About God," Jasmine replied simply. "About how he knows God is there, even when bad things happen." Silence fell over the dinner table. David and Monica exchanged glances. Since her grandmother's funeral, Jasmine had asked several questions about faith and suffering that they struggled to answer. On the day of the press conference, the Rage Heat training facility buzzed with the energy of dozens of sports journalists. Jasmine, wearing her number 30 jersey, sat in the last row next to her father, observing everything with attentive eyes. Butler entered the room with his characteristic air of relaxed confidence. He responded smoothly to questions about statistics, plays, and rivals. When it was time for audience questions, an assistant walked around with a microphone. "Go ahead," whispered David, giving a light push on his daughter's shoulder. With her heart beating fast, Jasmine raised her hand. To her surprise, the assistant walked in her direction and handed her the microphone. The cameras turned. The murmuring ceased. She swallowed hard, stood up, and with a surprisingly firm voice asked the question she had been keeping in her heart. "Mr. Butler, everyone knows you talk a lot about God and faith. After my grandmother passed away 2 months ago, I've been thinking a lot about this. How do you really know God is there when bad things happen? And how does your faith help you in difficult moments? Not just in basketball, but in real life." This deep silence took over the room. The last echo of Jasmine's voice faded in the press room. The journalists, normally eager to record every word, stopped typing. The cameras, which always sought dramatic reactions, remained fixed on Butler, as if their operators had momentarily forgotten their function. Jimmy Butler, accustomed to questions about tactics and rivalries, blinked a few times. He slowly removed his cap, a rare gesture during press conferences. He ran his hand through his short hair and leaned forward, elbows resting on the table. Something in his posture changed. He was no longer the basketball star giving an interview, but simply a human being connecting with another. "That," he began with a gentle smile directed at Jasmine, "is probably the most important question I've been asked here." He paused briefly. First, I want to say that I'm sorry about your grandmother. Losing someone we love is really difficult, especially when we're young. Butler's expression became more thoughtful. You know, I've also lost important people and questioned my faith. I have days when doubts seem stronger than certainties. His eyes met Jasmine's again. For me, faith doesn't mean never doubting. It means continuing to believe even when everything seems confusing. He adjusted the microphone as if also organizing his thoughts. It's like practicing shots. There are days when nothing goes in, when I don't feel the rhythm, when it seems like I've forgotten how to play. But I keep practicing because I know these moments pass. Faith is similar. I keep practicing even when I don't feel God nearby. The silence in the room was almost palpable. Not even the click of cameras dared to interrupt. In my worst moments, he continued, I don't find magical answers, but I find comfort in the idea that I'm not alone in suffering. My faith gives me perspective. It reminds me that there's something bigger than basketball, bigger than wins and losses. Butler then shared about the injury that almost compromised his career. I asked myself, why now? Why when I was at my best moment? But I learned to change the question from why me to what can I learn from this? His eyes gained a gleam of contained emotion. Sometimes faith isn't about having all the answers, but about finding peace, even when we don't have them, and about using our experiences, even the painful ones, to help others who are suffering without looking away from Jasmine. He concluded, You asked a question that many adults are afraid to ask publicly. That shows a lot of courage and maturity. I hope that regardless of how your spiritual journey develops, you keep that courage to question and seek answers that make sense to you. When he finished, no one moved. The press officer, a usually impassive man, had to clear his throat twice before being able to call the next question. Several journalists discreetly wiped their eyes. At the back of the room, Terry Butler, Stephen's father, watched with visible pride. David hugged Jasmine around the shoulders, feeling her tremble slightly under his arm. The conference continued, but something had changed in the atmosphere. The following questions seemed less important, and glances continued returning to Jasmine, who was now writing furiously in a small blue notebook, capturing every word she had just heard. This way, please. A Warriors security guard guided David and Jasmine through a side exit as several reporters tried to approach. Microphones extended in their direction. Mr. Butler asked us to ensure your privacy. In the car, Jasmine remained silent, her fingers tracing the edges of the small blue notebook where she had noted Butler's response. The city of Miami passed by the window, but her thoughts were elsewhere. Are you okay? Asked David, glancing briefly at his daughter before turning his attention back to traffic. I am, she replied. Just thinking. Monica waited anxiously at the door, still wearing her hospital uniform. So how was it? She asked, hugging Jasmine. During dinner, it was David who narrated the event with broad gestures and enthusiastic voice, contrasting with his daughter's contemplative silence. You should have seen the journalists' faces, as if they'd never heard someone talk about something real before. Later, while her parents watched the news, Jasmine went up to her room. She opened a drawer and took out a new hardcover brown notebook. On the first page, she wrote, Questions and discoveries started on October 12th after Jimmy Butler's response. She spent hours writing, processing thoughts that had been competing for space in her mind for months. The next morning, David's cell phone rang non-stop. The video had been posted online and spread like wildfire. As faith beyond basketball and SARS Butler response dominated social media. Sports programs dedicated entire segments not to analyzing plays, but to discussing the depth of Butler's response. At school, Jasmine noticed the looks and whispers as she walked down the hallways. Julie Reynolds, one of the popular girls who had never paid attention to her, approached during break. I saw the video, said Julie. Was it really you who asked Butler that question? My dad said it was the most real thing he's ever seen in a sports interview. In social studies class, Ms. Bennett surprised the class by playing the clip. This is a perfect example of how public figures can transcend their roles and influence. Important cultural conversations, she explained, looking directly at Jasmine with new respect. Meanwhile, at the Heat training facility, Butler examined the hundreds of messages he had received. Fans from all over shared their own stories of struggle and faith. During a team meeting, Coach Steve Kerr made an unexpected pause. "I want to say something," he began. "What happened yesterday at the press conference? That's true leadership, Jimmy, not just on the court." His teammates nodded in agreement, including those who didn't share his religious beliefs. There was respect for authenticity, for the ability to respond honestly without imposing perspectives. A week later, the Martinez's phone rang. It was the producer of a popular national talk show. Initially, David and Monica were against the idea of exposing Jasmine even more. But then another call came from Butler himself. "I totally respect if you prefer to keep this private," he said, "but I've been receiving so many messages from families dealing with loss and questioning Jasmine's courage in openly asking what many think silently that could help other people." On the show, under bright lights and cameras, Jasmine surprised everyone with her composure. "I didn't expect an answer," she explained to the host. "I just wanted to know if someone everyone admires also had the same doubts as me." The most impactful moment came when a hospital chaplain from Boston called into the show live. "I showed the video to a 13-year-old girl with leukemia," he said, his voice breaking. "It was the first time in weeks I've seen her smile." She said, "If Jimmy Butler also has doubts sometimes, maybe it's okay for me to have mine." The host, known for his irreverent style, looked directly at the camera with unusual seriousness. "In 20 years on this show," he said, "I've rarely seen a sports moment transcend its original context so much." Spring arrived in Miami with an explosion of colors. Cherry blossoms contrasted with the intense blue of the Florida sky. 6 months had passed since that press conference that no one in the Martinez family would forget. In the community room of the local library, a circle of teenagers was gathered. In the center, Jasmine, now almost 13 years old, facilitated the weekly discussion of the group she had founded. "Important questions. There's no wrong question here," she said to a new participant who seemed hesitant. "We're all trying to understand together." The group had started with just 3 teenagers, but now had almost 20. They discussed everything from loss and grief to questions of identity and purpose, themes that rarely found space in everyday conversations among young people. At Liberty City Middle School, David had revolutionized his physical education classes. "Mindfulness isn't just for yoga classes," he explained to surprised fellow teachers. Now his students ended each class with 5 minutes of reflection on how physical challenges connected with emotional and mental challenges. Claire, inspired by her daughter's courage, had begun facilitating support groups for families at Jackson Memorial Hospital. "Sometimes we just need a space to ask difficult questions without fear of judgment," she told hesitant administrators. The program quickly became one of the most requested at the hospital. On a sunny Sunday, the Martinez family visited the cemetery. Jasmine placed fresh flowers on her grandmother's grave and then opened her diary, no longer with tears, but with a sense of continuity. "Abuelita, you won't believe what happened this week," she said, reading her latest notes aloud, as if conversing with her grandmother. 2 weeks before, something extraordinary had happened. An envelope arrived by mail, tickets to a Heat game with a small card signed by Butler. After the game, they were led to a private room where the star waited for them away from the media spotlight. "This helped me a lot when I was about your age," said Butler, giving Jasmine a worn book with marked pages and folded corners. "I hope you also find something useful in it." Jasmine, Dad in turn, handed him an envelope. "It's a letter," she explained simply, "just for you to read." What was written remained between them, but Butler's smile, as he put it in his pocket, revealed its impact. The Butler Foundation for Children had expanded its scope to include a new program called Courageous Conversations, creating safe spaces in underprivileged communities where young people could discuss difficult issues with mentors. Athletes from different sports, beliefs, and perspectives regularly volunteered. David Keller, the veteran journalist who had been present at the press conference, had published a reflective article in The Athletic titled, "When Sport Transcends the Evolution of Faith on American Courts." The article went viral among coaches and educators. On the one-year anniversary of that transformative moment, a short documentary titled The Question premiered at an independent film festival. The film ended with Jasmine sitting in her room, more mature, but with the same contemplative look. "I asked a question because I was looking for an answer," she said to the camera. "What I learned is that sometimes the questions themselves are as important as the answers, and that it's possible to find strength, not just in certainties, but also in how we face our doubts together." The final scene showed Jasmine in the stands with David enthusiastically cheering as the Heat played against the Lakers. In her lap rested the same blue notebook where she had noted Butler's words that afternoon. Now completely filled, the notebook contained her own reflections on life, loss, and the courage to ask the questions that really matter. Have you ever asked a question that changed the way people see the world and made them question things? Share your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more inspiring stories.